Good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure for us from BPEP to have this crowd here. The idea of this event tonight and many of the events that we'll have along the semester is to foster entrepreneurship among academians. So for those of you who are not acquainted with BPEP, I would just do a very quick presentation before I invite our speakers to talk. Right? So before anything, we have to thank not only the Vice Chancellor of Research for sponsoring our work, but also VSPA. This is the Visiting Scholars and Postdocs Affairs Department in the university, and of course SkyDeck that provides us with the infrastructure to do these Barker Fellows. Also helps us with some of the infrastructure. If you're enjoying the beer, the pizza, the beer is actually the beer is SkyDeck, the pizza is Barker Fellows. There's all these different instances in the university that deal with entrepreneurship, and we all try to partner with one another. The mission of BPEP is basically to move innovation from the laboratories of the university to the market, right? We have a few goals: to provide an entrepreneurship toolkit through on-campus workshops. You'll see I'll present the workshops that we'll have for this semester, and we always try to record the events that we have. So whenever we were lucky to be able to do it in the past, we have this also in our website. So if anyone is interested in other topics that have already been discussed here, you just have to go to the BPEP website and it will be there for you. This is the team, the executive board for BPEP for 2018-2019. Some of us are leaving this year, so it's good that we see so many new faces here also. If anyone wants to join us and be at this side of the show, trying to organize events for scholars that want to become entrepreneurs, please send us an email later and maybe you will join the group. We have some of the ways that you can contact us, but most of you, if you're here, you probably received an email from us. You are already in our mailing list. If not, there is a list that is going around that you can put your name and we'll make sure that you know of the next events that we have. We also have, BPEP also organizes some other interesting activities to foster entrepreneurship. One of them is this Berkeley Science Fellows program. We actually had a meeting right at this place last night in which we were introducing postdocs to some of the cohorts of SkyDeck. And the idea is that people with very specific skills can help these companies that are starting with their own skills in a way that is that could be profitable for everyone. It's a voluntary work, but we think that it makes postdocs and other academians more aware of what happens in a startup, and at the same time it provides startup with very specific knowledge that they sometimes also need. And another thing that we try to do is we run this postdocs job portal. So if any one of you is a postdoc, are you a postdoc and you're looking for a job, you just go to this link, and whatever gets to our attention will be there, and hopefully we'll be making some introductions of postdocs to companies, not only in the Bay Area, but anywhere in the world. The BPEP, I think I missed, let me just go back here. That's the portal. So the workshop series that we are running now started in the fall of 2018. All of these topics have already been discussed here. They are all links in the BPEP website. So if you're interested in any of those topics, there is a recording there of what we did last year. And our plan for for this first semester of 2019 is to have these topics being discussed here. Today we'll have startup founders and founding teams, but notice that we have some other interesting topics being discussed next once a month usually. Well, before we dive into the topic of today, is Julia already around? She is?
Julia's not here yet.
Oh, Julia's not here, so skip that for maybe having it a little later. We'll have someone, as we say, we try to foster entrepreneurship in all different ways here, and whenever we have a possibility in campus or around campus that we think that is interesting to you, we bring people to talk about it. Another thing that we do, I don't know if we didn't prepare you for this yet this semester, but we want it to become a tradition, is if there is any brave entrepreneur that wants to make a quick pitch of their idea and maybe find some co-founders here in this audience, I will give them, there are, so please, come here. 2 minutes for your pitch. Thank you, they're more sort of in the middle here. You get closer to the camera. Yeah, this is dangerous.
So hi everyone. I'm sure you all do meetings in your life, career, and every day, and for every reason. And we all waste a lot of time during meetings because of organization, because some people didn't prepare, or for lack of follow-up or feedbacks. So basically, we are working with my team on a solution which works with artificial intelligence. It's an AI assistant that will help you to organize your meeting, help you during the meetings with all the documents you will need, and help you with analytics and the follow-up after these meetings. This is called Nash, actually, and we're working on that in Paris, in France. We have almost done our proof of concept, and I'm looking for some engineers interested in AI if they want to join the team. Thank you.
We have another picture.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris. I'm a Haas MBA candidate, and our team at Upstream is building a social content platform that finds you the best articles and videos on the web for your interests. So if you think about the problem of identifying good content, it's actually pretty complex. You can have a query for it, which takes a lot of subject matter knowledge and time. It's pretty time intensive to Google for everything that you want to see. Or you can rely on social media to identify content for you, in which case there's a very low signal to noise ratio. There's a lot of profile picture updates, engagement announcements, baby photos, which are great, but maybe not what you want to read on the BART. So we're building a dedicated platform that, number one, finds you the best content on the web for your interests. Number two, helps you organize that content in playlists, which are embeddable and shareable. We're looking for engineers. So if you're interested in recommender systems, ML, or scraping, please let me know. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We are reaching a record today. It's going to be the first time that we have 3 pictures.
Hey everyone, my name is Nate, and again, what is the most important thing in a kid's education? Is it the books that they read, is it the computer programs they use, or is it the teacher in their lives? So right nowadays we have a $43 billion ed tech industry, which is booming with all this new content, all these new tools to teach kids how to do all these really cool things. But you have the same instructional bandwidth as you did 50 years ago. You have one teacher teaching 30 kids. Which means no matter how big this $43 billion industry gets, no matter how many tools that you build, no matter how much books you give them, that teacher is still splitting their attention between 30 kids. What does that mean? You have more content, you have the same bandwidth. So what we're trying to do is we're going to train teacher assistants. We're building a software platform to train teacher assistants to increase that instructional bandwidth, to enable kids, no matter what grade you are, to take full advantage of all these new budding ed tech technologies. And so again, what we're building is a software platform for training TAs and a supply chain to supply those TAs in addition to that. So in particular, what I'm looking for somebody who's passionate about education in particular and has a little bit of experience working with schools or teaching who can help guide the development of this product. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So if anyone is interested in having a talk to these guys later today, you know, maybe we'll have some, hopefully we'll still have beer at the end, but we'll definitely have enough time for you to talk. Okay, going on with our program. I'm messing up things here, let me see. Yeah, this is it. So startup founders and founding teams, how to build early stage startup teams and leadership structures in our companies. We'll have this panel, we'll have Tara. I'll allow each one of our presenters here to talk a little more about their experience and how they got to become entrepreneurs later as they talk. But Tara is the founder and CEO of BioAmp Diagnostics. We have Balthazar, who's sitting where is Balthazar gone? No, he's somewhere. He'll be here soon. He's already there. Who's the co-founder of InkSpace Imaging. We have Jonathan Lowenhar. Is that the way you pronounce her name? Yeah. I didn't even dare to pronounce Tara deBoer. Okay. And myself, our team, we usually don't take part in the panel, but this time I said, well, I think I'll also grab a little bit of their time and attention, because I also co-founded 2 companies in Brazil about 30 years ago. I only remember the bad parts of it, but I think, you know, the bad things are the advice that we can give you. The things that went right are probably not as important. I'm not going to talk about that in my talk, but I'm very happy to talk about all these problems that we have when we're picking people to become our partners when we sit here to talk afterwards. Okay, well, without further ado, but reminding you that we have plenty of time to connect afterwards, I would like to invite Jonathan then to start giving his speech to us.
15 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to talk really fast. I'm going to curse probably a little bit too much, and I tend to be loud enough without a microphone. I'm a New Jersey Jew. This is what we all do if you're not accustomed to us. And what I'm going to talk through tonight are, very briefly, are what I call the 12 rules to startup hiring. How many folks here have hired people at some point in their life? Fantastic. How many people think it was easy? Great. How many people are planning to hire folks sometime in the next 6 or 12 months? Nope, none? How many here have an intention of actually doing a startup at some point in their lives? Great, then this is going to be useful. So a little bit of background about me. I started my career, while the slides catch up, I started my career in the casino gaming industry. I was actually in the gambling world for a long time. I lived in Las Vegas for a dozen years, and before that I was in Atlantic City. I started in analytics roles and sales roles and marketing roles and operating roles. So as far back as 2000, I had 400 employees around the world. Then I ran a company with about 3,000 employees. And then I kind of started to grow up, and I didn't want to live in Las Vegas anymore. I moved here to the Bay Area in 2007, spent about 9 months in professional purgatory. Like, I knew a lot about slot machines, and now I live somewhere where no one gave a shit. And after about 9 months, decided, like, all these folks are doing startups around me, might as well do one myself. So I did my first startup in fall of 2008, which, for those of you who were in the Bay Area at the time, was a great time to hire people, really shitty time for everything else. It was an analytics startup aimed back at hospitality, so kind of stayed within what I knew. Our customers were Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, that kind of idea. We raised 2 rounds of venture. The company kind of worked, and we ended up selling it successfully in summer of 2012. At that point, I was hooked on startup life. A little bit masochistic, I know, but I was hooked. I did one again. This time I joined someone else's startup. It was a seed stage startup, about $200,000 in revenue when I joined, 30 employees, a little bit of funding, about $2 million at the time. And over a 3-year journey, 2012, 13, 14, we turned it into a $20 million revenue business and about 240 employees and $100 million in capital. It was a crazy ride. I raised our Series D at the end of 2014 and then took a break. I took a 3-month sabbatical because I had run 3 companies in a row and I was freaking tired. But during that break, I came up on a hypothesis that eventually became my current company, which is a company called ETW Advisors, which stands for Enjoy the Work. where myself and about a half a dozen other folks who are all former founders that had built and grown and sold companies, we've gotten together and built frameworks to teach the next generation of founders. So we have a portfolio of companies that we work with every single week. On the small side, these are companies that have come out of Skydeck that are 3 or 4 folks that are just getting their company off the ground. On the other extreme, WeWork is one of our clients, which doesn't look anything like a 3-person seed stage startup. Okay. During all of that, I've had to hire and teach how to hire, and then fire, and then hire again, and then lay off, and then reorg, dozens and dozens of times over. And there are 12 rules that came out of that that ended up, for me, being more important than all of the other ones. They may never show up on the screen, so we're going to see how good my memory is. Rule number 1. If you want to hire people, make your place a place people want to work. Inbound leads are always better than outbound leads. Attracting is always better than convincing. Culture is not an accidental thing. It's something that has to be codified. You have to get in a room with the people you're starting a business with and say, who are we? If this is an alien topic for you, go online and Google search Netflix culture deck and read it. If you need other examples, I'll give you just one. There was a book written by Tony Hsieh, actually ghost written for him, but that's a different conversation, called Delivering Happiness. And in that book, Tony was walking through his telemarketing world, and he had a reporter with him. The reporter said to him, Tony, how come all of your telesales people, which is not a terribly enjoyable job in the United States, are smiling and happy? And he said, it's really simple. I hire people who smile. This is what culture means. You figure out who you are and you write it down, what your core values are, and you write it down. Second rule, that is definitely not one of my slides, but it's adorable. The second
we're getting there, right?
We're getting closer. The second rule that I'll suggest is when I have an entrepreneur say to me or my team, my most important thing is to hire this type of person. That is never the fucking goal. The goal is something you're trying to achieve in your business. The person is a way to get there. Start with the goal. It might not be a hiring decision. It might be a renter decision, or a consultant, or a piece of software, or an agency, or it might be hiring, but start with the goal. Next, you now know the role. You know what you need. Please, God, write a job description. Most early stage entrepreneurs skip this step. They're lazy about it. How many of you have interviewed for something serious in your life? When you interview for something serious, don't you come in with a whole lot of questions? Serious questions. Like, what's my mandate, and who do I report to, and what resources will I have available to me, and what's the budget going to be? Serious questions. You will not hire serious people unless you write a serious job description. Okay, so now you have a job description. Now you have to go find somebody. That was when I was gambling.
Okay, how many?
If you're going to go find someone, there are 2 ways to go find someone.
How do I put it in the presentation over here?
There is a passive search and there is an active search. Passive search means I have my job description and I put it up on a website, like Indeed or AngelList, and I hope someone finds me. Okay, that'll work for some roles, but the best people out there that you possibly could want to hire are not looking for jobs, which means you have to go get them. So if you want to go find someone, be active about it. You have to go hunt for them. I have so many adorable slides that would have made this funnier.
Sorry.
It's okay. So you got to run ahead of the pack because they are chasing you. So here's the thing. If you are a talented person in the Bay Area, you have 0% unemployment, and you are getting poached and pinged all the time. If you are the entrepreneur that just slaps a job description up on LinkedIn and hopes that I'm going to have someone contact me, your quality of talent will pale in comparison to the other folks that are trying to do the same thing you're trying to do. Okay, so let's say you agree to that. Here's the thing. You're now going to start generating candidates. They're going to come to you, you're going to go get them. Here's the next thing I want to remind you of. You are outrageously biased and you don't realize it. So this represents a Google search of the word CEO. It's hideous. It's also true. What I mean by that is, get rid of the biases you already have. Figure out ways to mitigate them. The number one thing you can do to start to mitigate them is hire as a group. Don't hire yourself. So look, anytime you're a hiring manager, you need to figure something out. Like, if I don't get this person on my team, I don't achieve this milestone, and then my company doesn't work, and I will throw myself off a bridge because my family won't love me anymore. That is the spiral that most founders eventually go through. Well then, that means if you're the hiring manager, you are grossly biased, because you have to solve that need. And confirmation bias will hit. You will ignore the negative signals of that potential candidate. The way to mitigate that is have a group of folks do it. And then interview on 3 separate dimensions. Interview on culture, interview on functional skills, interview on technical skills. These are 3 different things. Culture. Is this person a good hang? Do you want to have a beer with them? Will you enjoy working with them? Are they aligned values with you? Functional skills. Can they describe the job to you in a competent way? Technical skills. Can they prove they can do what they just said? So get other people on your team. If your team is so tiny you don't have other people, then get advisors or investors or people you trust, and all of you interview. And here's the other rule. When you're this early, since culture matters so damn much, any one of you should get veto rights. So whoever the hiring manager is, don't have that person have unilateral authority, even if it's founder CEO, because they're the most biased one here. Which brings me to one of the things you can do and one of the rules in startup hiring. Please don't be lazy about reference checks. There are 2 types of reference checks. There are reference checks that the candidate provides you, and the reference checks you find on your own, otherwise known as back-channel reference checks. A lot of entrepreneurs who are new to hiring are lazy about candidate-provided references. They think it's a waste of time because candidates will only provide good references. That's some bullshit. It's just different things you can learn. If the candidate provides you someone that they've used to work with, get on the phone with that person and say, how do I get the most out of this person? How does this person want to be managed? What is their strengths? What are the parts of the job that I should make sure that's not in their way? How could I be a lousy manager to them? Back-channel references where you find someone on your own, that's where you're looking for smoking guns and seeing if they in fact lied to you about something on their resume. Okay. This is something that can feel uncomfortable to technical founders in the room, which I'm going to guess is, all of you. Functional skills, cultural fit. Functional skills for most startups are utterly commoditized. In a market like the Bay Area, you're always going to find, generally speaking, other people with the same skills. You will not always find someone who has those skills, who gets along with your team and believes in your vision amazingly well. In the earliest of days, err on the side of culture fit. Here's the other thing that startups do, and here's another one of the rules. When you're interviewing someone in your early days, don't put cosmetics on your startup. And what I mean by that is, give the person you're interviewing a realistic preview of what they're getting into. Your startup is a mess. Of course it is. You're super young, it's super early. Things don't quite work, the team isn't fully fashioned, you're working out of a coffee shop. The funding is coming, but it's not quite there yet. Whatever it is, it's fine. All early stage companies are a mess. What startup founders make the mistake of are being embarrassed by the mess. And then you hire someone, inflating the resume of your business, and then they come in and they see the mess, and then they leave. Short-term turnover in startups is because you didn't give a realistic preview. Please don't do that. Almost done. Next. You're going to meet someone, and they're going to be amazing. But you have to ask a really important question. Why do you want to join my business? If most of their answer is about why they want to leave the place they're at, they're an escape artist. Don't ever hire escape artists. I don't care how seductive they are. You only want to hire people who incredibly want to join your company, not run from the prior one. There was a blog post, 2013, by a guy named Mark Manson, The article is called Fuck Yes or Fuck No. How many people have heard of it? Anybody? Anybody? No? I got one. I got one in the back. Nice. Okay, premise of the article is really simple. If you're going to enter into a relationship and you're really ready for the one, you're trying to find that person. And as you're dating, if you meet someone and you've gone out on a couple of dates and you're thinking about, like, is this the person? If any part of you is not, like, entirely lit up and stimulated by the idea of seeing this person again, you are by definition fuck no. For early stage hiring, it's the same idea. If you and your colleagues look across each other about someone you're thinking about hiring and you're not all lit up about the prospect of landing that person on your team, it is by definition fuck no. It does mean hiring more slowly, and that makes it uncomfortable, but it means you will wait until someone joins your team that you are crazy about. Last one. You got the person. If you go back through all these steps, we have figured out our goal, so we have written a job description, so we've posted, we've gotten candidates in, and we've done reference checks as a part of an interview process where we did cultural, we did functional, we did technical, we did all the steps. We are looking across each other at the table and we're like, this is the person we want. That person is not yours until they've told their current job they're leaving. Signing your offer letter is not enough. Telling you in person is not enough. They are not yours until they've told their current place they're leaving. So, as Mr. Baldwin once said, always be closing up until that point, because they're not yours yet. I'm Jonathan, and I'll be over there, and you can ask me questions then.
Hey, give it up for Jonathan.
And Jonathan has just showed us one very important thing about, I'll turn this on again.
I'll just plug in one thing. Jonathan is extremely busy. He made out time just for us today. He made his presentation only for you guys, you know. So you give me pizza. Thank you again.
And IPA, that beer is excellent. Yeah. No, I was saying that one of the things that he's shown here is a very important attribute of in an entrepreneur, flexibility. You know, when we were there messing up with the technology and showing how stupid we are when we are here being pressed by a presenter and an audience, and we can't even find where we put some PDF in presentation mode. He was here doing all his work. Okay, so thank you very much for that, Jonathan. Tara, could you be the second one? Sure. Okay, thank you. You don't need the technology, right? So
No technology. All right, so we're going to change it up quite a bit. I am a CEO and a co-founder of a company that spun out from UC Berkeley. So I'm going to just kind of give a little background about my story and how I came into this position, because I was not originally the CEO of this company, and then kind of give you some little tips and tricks and things that I've seen to be really powerful, and I wish somebody would have told me right out of the gate when I was starting a company. So I'm a chemist by training. I have my PhD in chemistry and biochemistry from UC Santa Cruz. So I look a lot like many of you sitting in the audience. Back in 2015, I came to UC Berkeley to work in the bioengineering department. I wanted to be more on the applied side of science. So I jumped ship from more traditional chemistry. I was working in medicinal chemistry in my graduate studies. And I came over to the bioengineering department. I also came for CRISPR technology. That's what I was really interested in. I published a couple papers in that, and I jumped out very quickly. I saw that as a chemist, I wasn't going to really have a huge impact in that field, and so I got really a little bit more excited about some other projects that were in my area, more my area of expertise, and that's actually diagnostics. So I'm in Professor Neri Murthy's group, and he does a really great job of kind of spearheading collaboration. So one of the things I kind of saw in one of our group meetings was that there was this project ongoing, a consortium effort between material science, bioengineering, and public health that was developing diagnostics to be able to direct treatment for this issue of antimicrobial resistance. So how many of you have heard about antimicrobial resistance, right? It's pretty hard not to these days, right? So as a chemist, I thought, ooh, this is kind of interesting. It's medical, it's very applied. Something about it really struck me. And so I started working on this project kind of blindly and optimistically. And I kind of just invited myself into this project, and I said, hey, can I come to this meeting with you? And he's like, yeah, sure, okay. So I came, and I was really excited because what they were working on was developing rapid point-of-care diagnostic tests to be able to help doctors actually have information to treat their patients. So right now, if any one of us go into a doctor's office and we think we have an infection that's caused by a bacteria, there's really actually no way that a doctor can know immediately that you're actually suffering from an infection that's caused by anything. They don't know, so they guess. And that guessing has actually contributed to this big rise of antibiotic resistance, right? So the whole idea is, can we create systems that can really help give doctors information immediately so they can impact this patient's care. And so when I came in, I went straight to the medical physician who was working on the project, and I said, what's the number one issue? Why is this such a big problem? How come we're treating patients the same way we have been since the inception of antibiotics, right? And he said it comes down to limit of detection. There's just so few bacteria that trigger our immune response that create these symptoms, but they're just too little in there to actually be able to detect and to be able to help to even direct treatment of. And so there's lots of companies in this space that are trying to create these kind of very sophisticated instrumentation to be able to detect these things in, as fast as possible, but there's really nothing that's scalable that's going to be able to meet the needs of a lot of patients, and this affects everybody around the world. And so I kind of sat in and was like, okay, limit of detection. And as a chemist, I started to really think about this problem. Long story short, I developed a technology that ultimately allows us to be able to identify resistance markers real time. I can't detect the bacteria yet, but we're working on first just looking at markers that are going to direct treatment of patients. So patented a technology, an amplification technology that's non-instrument based. It's all just simple chemistry. We patented the technology through UC Berkeley. I was a postdoc. So, we ran our first small-scale study with our technology to see if we can find these biomarkers in patients that are here on the Berkeley campus. So we worked with the Tang Center, and our first patient population that we're going after is people that have, urinary tract infections. So it turns out urinary tract infections are the most common bacterial infection, one of the most common around the world. There's 150 million of them diagnosed every year. And they're a big driver of resistance because every time a patient comes in saying they think they have a UTI, a urinary tract infection, they are treated with an antibiotic. And actually only about 20% of those patients really are suffering from an actual UTI. So you can think that's just a huge number of patients that are being treated with antibiotics inappropriately. So we went into this patient population first, and we started testing people's urine here on the Berkeley campus. And that's how we got to BioAmp Diagnostics, is I got to see in real time that we were able to identify these markers we were going after. And we actually had a lab mate came in, and she had just gone to a doctor, and she said, yeah, I think I have a urinary tract infection. I'm very uncomfortable, but my doctor says I don't. And so she didn't give me anything. The Bay Area is at least a little bit better about not giving antibiotics inappropriately. So she came back, and I said, hey, I'm running this assay right now. Why don't you give me some of your urine? And so she did, and within 2 minutes, I could tell her, you've got a UTI, and it's actually drug resistant, unfortunately. And that was the moment that I knew, I was like, okay, this is something that could potentially work, and why not try it? So the thing that I think everybody in this room needs to recognize is that we're all extremely privileged. We're extremely privileged to be in this environment, this mecca of entrepreneurship and infrastructure and network of people that can actually make your dream come true if you really think that there's something there, right? So the very first thing that it did is just having the intellectual property office actually help patenting the technology, right? That was the very first thing out of the gate. That's all the tech, but then you think about starting your business, the founding team. How do you actually build a sustainable group of people to then get your dream out into the real world, right? Because it's just, you can't do it by yourself. And that's where everything gets complicated. Everything I just told you up to now is the really exciting part, and I think that's what actually spurs you to even take on the idea of entrepreneurship. But then everything after that is extremely difficult. But you have to at least have the excitement, right? Out of the gate, you have to be excited about it, and I really do think that's one of the things that is a good yes or no indicator is, am I so passionate about this that if it doesn't work, it's like I'm gonna put everything I can into it out of the gate. And so I will say I'll just give you a little bit of background about how I formed my team initially and what things, and then you can ask questions later on. I won't go too much into depth, but I will say is that I brought on a co-founder. So I really I've seen other founders try to take this on independently, and it's very difficult. You need somebody that you can commiserate with, you can sit in and really have some deep conversations with and bounce. You need somebody to be able to talk ideas out with. But it is important to find the right mix of a person to be able to create a team that's not going to break apart under pressure. And so I actually called a friend on a Sunday morning. I distinctly remember sitting in my kitchen, called a girlfriend that I had gone to graduate school with, and I said, hey, I have a technology. I just have been running this validation study on these clinical samples, and I think it could be something really interesting, and the market's there, all these things. And she's like, yep, let's do it. And that was it. And what we should have really sat in on is creating the expectations, putting in, what we saw our roles being, how we were going to take these next steps. But the thing is, you don't know any of that. That's the reality. The first time that you take on a company, you don't know any of these things. And so what we were lucky enough to do is take part in a lot of the resources here on the Berkeley campus. We were accepted into the Citrus Foundry, which was then one of the #1 biggest things that impacted I think the fact that our company is still alive today, is we paired with the Citrus Foundry, who is really specializing in deep technology companies. So they understand technical founders like myself. They understand how my mind's already working, and they're just trying to help me tune it and tailor it so I can actually build a business. But they also really put in the importance in mentorship. Your team, so when you're building your team, right now my team, 2 years in, is advisors. Right? I'm not hiring anybody quite yet. We're still working to raise money. It's advisors. And so actually the people that we brought on early on are still with us. And our team is advisors and amazing people in this space that already know a lot and that are able, I can call at any time and say, hey, I'm thinking about maybe bringing this other person on. What are you thinking? And they sit there and they do a whole thought exercise with me. So your team changes and evolves, but my team was my immediate family, my friends, and all of the advisors I was really counting on to help me move to the next stages, and then it will continue to expand from there. So we did switch up gears and change we changed on different founders down the line, and we can talk about those things as well. But I would like to say that I think I'm very close to where many of you are, and there's really no way of being able to predict some of the things you're sure to face in the upcoming months when you start a company. So feel free to ask me questions as the night goes on.
I don't know if Julia is, I told Julia that she was going to talk at the end after Balthazar and me, but maybe after Tara talked about this entrepreneurship ecosystem that we have here in Berkeley, after I had already said that it's the mission of BPEP to make sure that we are another part of that, I think that maybe Julia could bring us some interesting ideas of a different partner that we could have in this entrepreneurship journal of ours. So I'll hand it to her, and then after that, to Balthazar. And we're messing up with the technology. The technology is working now. Good.
No, it's working. Excellent. Thank you. Right.
There you go.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Shaletsky. I'm the Executive Director of CENT, the Center for Emerging and Neglected Diseases, and also IVRI, the Immunotherapy and Vaccine Research Institute here at UC Berkeley. I came to Berkeley 1.5 years ago after having worked in the biotech industry for more than a decade. Originally trained in Germany as a biochemist, I went to Boston to Harvard Medical School to do my PhD in cell biology, bioscience, and then moved to the Bay Area to join the biotech world and worked at cytokinetics for more than 10 years, developing new medications against heart failure, ALS, neurodegenerative diseases, so trying to improve muscle function in patients. And now I joined Berkeley, and running Center for Emerging and Neglected Diseases, the thing that interests me is to contribute to the translational research capability on campus. And we've tried, during my hiring, I kind of brought this to the table as a skill. I had real deep expertise in high throughput screening, preclinical development of compounds. I thought I could set this up at Berkeley, and they said, yeah, go for it. And we raised some money to build a small molecule discovery center at UC Berkeley that so far hasn't existed for some reason. Most schools have it. I don't know why Berkeley never really invested in that area, but we were able to raise money from private funders and then are currently building it. I made a hire and we have acquired a library. We already bought some of the instrumentation and are setting that up. So I'm going to give you a quick overview. I just want to raise awareness about that part of the infrastructure. We're going to come into fully functional mode within the next couple of months. Things are coming, compots are coming. SEN team is pretty big. We focus on connecting researchers across campus to benefit emerging and neglected diseases. We organize symposia, we give out graduate fellowships, so that's kind of the bread and butter of what SEN does. We're trying to connect researchers from diverse disciplines, educate people about potential innovators, about emerging and neglected diseases, which are some disease areas that really least research is going in and also least translation is going in. So we're trying to always have that angle to it. And the thing I'm really trying to do is to catalyze more research to transform innovative ideas and bring things forward into a channel that goes more into commercialization and closer to the patient. So I'm trying to work with the faculty directly who have a really unparalleled deep expertise in the target space. I mean, it's something you find rarely in industry, I have to say, but they just know everything about the target and it's wonderful working with them. They have no idea how to develop something towards IND. But so I feel there's a real complementary approach there that could work for the campus. And so that's why the SEN Small Molecule Discovery Center will fit right in. So we're trying to enable state-of-the-art tool, compound, and drug discovery. We have 100,000 compound chemical, high diversity chemical library and a 15,000 antimicrobial focused library at this time. We're still buying compounds, so we're rounding out our set. And we have liquid handlers and we have access on campus to a variety of machines we can use also through the recharge system, so almost any assay is within our reach. And I've hired an industry veteran with like more than 20 years experience in screening who will help set up the assays. And the other thing we can offer is good connections to the industry. I mean, I have a team of about 8 chemists that are just waiting to help out pro bono to get projects moved forward. So I mean, they all volunteered to help us design molecules and help advise also how to get from a hit in a screening campaign to a molecule that you can actually dose in animals and obtain proof of concept for your idea, for example. So I think we could make a lot of connections there and push a translational research forward. All right, IVRI, I'm not going to talk about too much right now, but I mean, this is a little outdated, but we've raised money from, as I said, fundraising. We got $2 million through donations. We made our hire. We're going to be operating actually much like a startup. It's very lean. I have one hire and myself, but I think it can work in that environment. We have a pretty generous lab space available and already have sourced a lot of equipment and compounds and trying to, getting the library in. We need to do a lot of lab work, stamping plates, get things ready for assays, doing assay development, and then we can go. The thing I'm still trying to figure out that's on my to-do list is how to structure this in a sustainable way, because we have funding to get started, but then how do you, we want to keep the bar low to actually use the infrastructure so it can't be too expensive. The recharge system, the way it's implemented at Berkeley is a little prohibitive there, so we're trying to find other ways how we can make the library accessible to projects and also to founders, want to start a program. How many of you are interested in biotech startups? All right, yay! Yes. Because the majority of programs, if you're talking small molecule, which still constitutes 80% of all drugs out there that we're currently using, you basically have to start with a screening approach. I mean, very few systems where you don't have to use it. And we also have contacts to chemists that help synthesize and outsourcing for synthesis, that even if you already have a lead, you want to make it better, and we could help run the assays and kind of move the project forward that way. But that's basically what we add. I'll hang around today afterwards, so if you want to talk to me, I'm happy to answer questions, give you my card, and stay in touch. And I'm excited to hear about the projects that you guys are planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. See what when we mean resources, the resources are here and are around us. It's important that we map them and make sure that we have them work for our enterprises as well, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, just, okay, Balthazar.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. My name is Balthazar. I'm with a company called InkSpace Imaging, co-founder. And like Tara, I joined Berkeley as a postdoc. I did my PhD in France on the printed solar cells, and joined Berkeley in the group of Professor Anna Arias and Corey Hall. And she specialized, well, she still does, she specializes in what are the new things you can do with printed electronics. And that's the reason why I joined her group, was because I was like, okay, I did my fundamental research on materials and making solar cells, and the question I was asking myself was, okay, what's fun? What can you do that's fun and exciting with that? And we had a project that had already started where Anna had collaborated with another professor called Mickey Lustig, who specializes in MRI. And so the way that MRI works is that you have a big machine that's a magnet. And when you get in the machine, what happens, the magnet sends a radio wave through your body. Your body absorbs the wave and re-emits it. And the re-emitted signal carries the information needed to make the image. And so a critical piece of this system is that you need to capture this re-emitted wave very, very neatly to have a good image. And so you need a very good antenna. And so Mickey had asked Anna, can you make a printed antenna for MRI? And that was really an investigational project. So I joined this project when I joined Anna's group, and at first it was very, very technical. It was like, okay, how do we make it? We were solving all these engineering problems. And then we came up with something that worked surprisingly better than we thought it would. And then we had a partnership with Stanford where we did a few trials on volunteers, and that got the radiologists really excited. And that's when we reached that point where we're like, oh, this could actually be something that's useful. So we were really excited, and actually that's true that this is really just the beginning. So then the next question was, how do we make a business out of that? So another member of Anna's group, whose name is Joe, so together with the 4 co-founders. So Joe and I went to take use some of the resources available at Berkeley, namely the MBA school and the entrepreneurship classes that are available. So we took a Lean Launchpad class where the whole point is to understand how, who is your customer, what's the customer's problem that you're trying to solve, and what's the value that you're bringing to the customer. So we identifying product market fit or solution problem fit in the first moment. And so we did that. It involved doing a lot of customer interviews. We did 130 customer interviews in 8 weeks in this project and in this program. And so we interviewed a lot of radiologists, a lot of technologists that work in MRI. And we came back and we said, okay, we don't understand, our thing is great, but we don't understand how it's bringing value to the world. And we thought it was over. But we had funding to keep developing the technology for a couple more years, so we kept going because we're like, okay, back to being scientists, so at least let's finish this project. So we kept developing the technology, and the more we worked with radiologists at Stanford, the more we're like, okay, there is something we missed when we first did our 100 and something interviews. So that's when we, always taking advantage of the resources available. So we started talking with advisors, with more people involved in entrepreneurship on campus, and we met Eugene No, I don't know if some of you know him, who runs the NSF I-Corps program. So the National Science Foundation runs a program specifically tailored for would-be entrepreneurs who think they have an interesting technology, and whose whole goal is to help teach how to identify the business opportunity when you have a good technology. And so thanks to Eugene and then to the whole NSF, we went through that process again of interviewing a lot of people in a very structured manner, and this time we also had a budget to go travel in other places than there's just the Bay Area, so to talk with more than just the radiologists in the Bay Area. And after 120 more customer interviews, so after 250 customer interviews overall, we said, okay, now we know what's the value we're bringing. And it was really understanding that we were talking earlier with like radiologists and people who use MRI and patients, but in healthcare, they are not the customers. The customer is the financial administrator of the suite who looks at his bottom line and says, okay, with your thing, I can actually put one more patient per day in the suite, and as a result, I can make $1,000 more every day, which ends up being a lot of money for any, I mean, especially for MRI suites. So that was that for us. That was like the key enabler, the first like business insight. Insight. Sorry, where we were like, okay, we have a technology and we understand how that can bring value to the world, and then we started building the company. And that's, I think, something that I really credit Berkeley for is, and going back to what you were saying and Julia as well, like there is everything to every resource to always have something to help you go to the next step here, and that's very unique. So we were able to use a startup in a box with QB3 to found a company, get in touch with lawyers, with bankers, and get deals where we could do that in a manageable way. We wrote grants, so we got SVR funding to help us transition the technology from a lab product, from a lab prototype to something that's actually looks like a product we could give to hospitals now, and they don't make faces and they see the thing and they're like, you want to put this on the patient. And also we went through Skydeck. So we raised, thanks to Skydeck, we really worked on like developing our business model, developing our strategy. We raised some money from private investors, and now we start to have employees. We have a very big network of advisors, and that I think is a very also key message. I think if you count the number of people we interact with, I don't know, like as a company it's maybe 20 people. I mean, we actually have only 2 employees, so everybody else is either consultants or advisors, or sometimes investors. Some investors can be very helpful. So the testimony I have here is basically going back to first thing, once you have good technology, it's great, be excited, but that's really just one piece of the puzzle and you need to figure out all the other pieces. Second thing is the good news is you're in Berkeley and there's really everything you need to figure this out. And I encourage you to take advantage, to look around, and every time you think, oh, I have this issue, ask around yourself and you'll quickly be directed to the good resource either on campus or outside of campus but in the Bay. And then the third thing in particular, in our case, the team of co-founders is myself, 2 faculty and another former PhD student. Founding a team with your former faculty, and in our case we have 2 faculty, so it's double the challenge. It has its own challenges. I mean, I'm happy I did it. The fact that Anna and Miki are on the team definitely is what, I mean, the business would not be here without them. So like the faculty have a critical piece of value to bring. But then you have to manage the relationship with your advisor to grow from, oh, I'm your PhD student, or oh, I'm your postdoc and you pay my salary every month, to, oh, we're actually on equal footing and I get, whatever you say, I choose this, I'm against that, and that's a different relationship. Especially since we have a tendency to trust the advisors a lot when it comes to science. And when you go to the business side, then it's a relationship to reinvent, because when you do the interviews, you have the business insights, and you have to convey it to them and make them understand. And sometimes it's not easy. And then, of course, sometimes it goes both ways, right? Sometimes you go one direction, they're like, no, this is silly, let's go back to that, and they're right. But yeah, just one thing to be aware of is the same way you need to choose your co-founders. Well, I mean, you need to choose your co-founders well, and when it's your faculty, it's something that you need to work on from the start. And in our case, it worked well, but because that's something that, it's every step of the way, that's something that we were aware of, and that I think the faculty co-founders were aware of as well. And as the others, I'll be around for questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Balthazar. All right, well, considering that I've put Jonathan through such stress here with the slides, I decided to give up my slides here. Because my message at this point is very simple. Who is the first person you have to hire when you start a business? Yourself. Yeah, yourself. So the first thing that we should do is, and of course that's a guy, a person that you cannot think, well, there's better alternatives, right? Because if you want to be part of the business, you will have to be there. But you can first check or analyze what the good aspects of your personality are for becoming an entrepreneur, and which ones you have to work on, or where you need maybe either the help of other people, counseling or whatever, or eventually other co-founders that can cope with those parts of yourself that you don't see in yourself, right? So the first way we have to remember, we are our first employees. And if we are the first employees, what are our main qualities? Well, most of us here, PhD holders or, postdocs, some of us graduate students, one thing that we've definitely proved the work is that we are smart, right? And also that we persevere on the things that we do. That's very important for an entrepreneur, right? Because things start with enthusiasm, but just after that first bit of enthusiasm, we have all the bad news. And it's only bad news at the beginning. There is no cash coming in. The cash flow is really bad. When you have to talk to bankers, you talk to bankers in a very bad position because you have only an idea. And we persevere. We can live, for most of you who've been here as postdocs or who have been working on your thesis for 4, 5, 6 years sometimes, eating noodles every night, that means that you can also live on a very small budget. That is also very good at the beginning, right? So there's a lot of those things that we are very good at that are very good in an enterprise. But, and this is something that Peter Fisk, that was one of the mentors that we had here at Naresh can talk a little better about him later, that used to say, but there's also things that we are bad at. And one of the things that we are usually bad at is we love to be in the lab, spend 6 months there to find out something that in business at least you could get on a 15-minute call, right? We're perfectionists, but we have this thing that we want to find everything by ourselves and our way, or at the library, right? The work of business doesn't happen at the library because we have to provide, we're talking here about business value, we have to provide business value to a customer, right? So we have to talk to the customer. And in fact, not talk at the customer. That's also another thing that we usually in academia are very good at. We're good at talking at people. We're lecturers, right? Many times, or at least we've been hearing so many lectures that's the kind of relationship that we sort of engage in. So we want to talk. We think that we have great ideas. We want to tell other people about them, but we forget that we have to listen. And listening is something that we should all think that it's something that we'll have to change if we want to become good entrepreneurs, right? So some qualities of an academia, some general problems that we all have, but things that we have to be aware of with respect to becoming entrepreneurs. And then when we have to hire the second person, or maybe make a phone call to, it's usually a friend, well, we can debate that later. Jonathan seems to, for the conversation that we had before we started here, it seems to have already a little different idea to mine, but I also started my first company with my four best friends. We were all very similar in many things. In fact, there's a very good thing, and there's trust there, right? Trust is very important. You have to trust people so that you commit to only eating noodles and being sure that they are also eating noodles and they're not having a barbecue, right, with the little money that the company has at the beginning. So you know that everyone is putting the same effort. So it's good to have trust, but at the same time, in our case, we started, and I said that I was not going to talk about the bad things right now, I'll leave them for later, but we were 4 electrical engineers, electronics, or it's the computer science of the 80s, and we didn't know anything about business, and we were not in the Bay Area, we were back in Brazil, right? All this infrastructure that you have, you go to Haas, talk to some business professor there and they give you some hints, or they say, take my class and you'll be all right, or you just get one of my MBAs and have him hang around, and those things were not available to us. So one of the problems that we had from the beginning, we were 4, but we were actually just 1. We had very little diversity. And I would say diversity at the beginning seems to me to be something important. You have to have other people that think differently to you. Of course, it would be good if they're all are balanced in power. I understand this thing of you're talking to your ex-advisor. It's probably an awkward situation when we all become partners in a business. But you have to have people that think as differently to you as you can, because it's the beginning of, and of course it's only worth if you can listen to them, right? Because it's playing with having this, what I call the devil's advocates, people that were going to say, okay, I understand what you're saying, but what if, and people start making you feel that your ideas are not that great, right? They will make you go a little slower. Sometimes we're too enthusiastic with our great ideas, and it's good that we are enthusiastic because otherwise we don't even start. But at the same time, it's good if we have someone that sees the problems and the good things from different perspectives than we do. We should explore that as much as we can, of course, but we have to have other good listeners around. We have to become good listeners, and we have to make sure that we choose other partners that are good listeners, that will tell what their impression is, but be willing to understand also what your perspective is, and then only judge at the end, right? Sometimes we choose, and I'm talking, I started 2 companies, and I committed mistakes in choosing partners, probably in both of them. They were great people. Some of them are still very good friends, but I realized that maybe we have chosen, if I had chosen differently, we could have taken our enterprises in even different directions, exploring diversity for sure, and also considering, I think, another issue that you may consider is considering that if everyone in the group wishes to be exposed to the same level of risk, right? You may have the impression that entrepreneurs are risk takers. To some extent we are, right? But we usually calculate very well, because we are eating noodles, and we will not even have the noodles to eat if we do things really, if we mess up with things, right? So you have to have partners that are willing to be exposed to the same level of risk that you are, I think, at the beginning, right? And maybe this is the thing of settling in or checking how much time are we going to put into this, how much efforts, for how long we will try before we decide that we have to get a job. Because for you it may be 3 years, and for one of your partners it may be 6 months, and of course that's going to cause a problem after 2 or 3 months already, because they will already be seeing no light at the end of the tunnel, and you still have a long way to go. So all of those things have to be considered, right? One of the situations that I had with my partners in the first company was that as soon as we started the company, my wife got pregnant. She's there a few months. I became much more conservative than I was just a few months before, right? Because of that. And that made us change, or at least me change a lot of my perception of the business and how far we should go, how much we should risk or could risk. Of course, that's not something that we had agreed on our when we were deciding on the company. Is anyone going to have children or whatever? But just saying that sometimes even the same person becomes more conservative or changes their perception even about risk as different situations in life happen. So I just wanted to leave you with that thoughts for now. The idea now is that we could have the panelists or the speakers here to sit at the table, and we will maybe take questions from you, listen to your comments, or maybe we will sit there and we will listen, right? As I said, one of the things that we should do is we should try and listen what others have. But could I invite you guys, Balthazar? All right. I'll just leave this here or maybe you want to have that. And from what I've heard, if we try these things here, they will. But maybe that one is for the camera. That's the one that's for there. But all of the others, if we, or maybe we can just yell.
Thank you for the talk, and I'll open up the floor for questions. We'll start there, and then I have a few questions to the panelists. We can go from there. Questions?
How do you decide when to hire a new person rather than just learning how to do that task yourself?
I probably have a comment to that. Jonathan mentioned this about your hires. What I'm learning right now is your hires are all based on your milestones, what things represent inflection points to your company that are going to move things along and show progress to investors typically, right? Or to getting your product to market. And so that's how I look at hiring. Like, who are the people that we need to actually execute this? How much can be done by myself, by my co-founder, because we are technical founders. So Nicole Tarleton is my co-founder. She's a microbiologist. So I'm a chemist, she's a microbiologist. We do not have overlapping skill sets. So between the two of us, we can do quite a bit. But I start to find when I'm not sleeping, right? I don't have enough time in the day. Sometimes, yeah, I could probably learn how to do whatever it is, but it's going to get us there so much quicker if I don't have to extend out myself, and then it's taking me away from the business side, from the fundraising components. Like, I think it's really something that you have to feel inside. That's how I've been gauging this. It's like feeling inside, like, nope. And I think that's the hardest thing for technical founders sometimes, is saying, no, I'm not the best person. I should not do this right now, and recognizing that and calling it out quickly.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is that part of what makes this journey unique is that, unlike normal companies, startups are on a clock, and there are two kind of parts to the clock. One is, when do I run out of money? And two, when do I run out of emotions to keep doing this incredibly hard thing? And so if you're contemplating hiring someone, you have to weigh it against the clock, because it will either reduce the amount of money that you have, or give you a chance of doing some next hard milestone before you run out of energy for it.
The one thing I would like to add is what you were saying earlier in the presentation as well, is based on the goal. So if what you're hiring, like if you have a squeeze, you're like, oh my god, I cannot do everything on my own, but then you're like, oh, this thing that I need to do is only like a 3-month job, and then we're over. Then you're going to hire a consultant or find an advisor or something. When it's something like, oh, I need someone to do that for the next 3 years, then the answer is obvious. Like, this is someone we're hiring, and not the earlier, even if they're not, I mean, even if over the year the roles are going to change, if you bring someone that's a good fit for a company and who can grow with the company, then you have like an extra pair of hands, very skilled hands, and someone you can trust to solve the challenges.
Yeah, just one plug in there. It's a very interesting situation. In our case, I said we were 4 engineers, right? So we suddenly realized that we needed someone to do the most basic business stuff. It was not even selling, because our product sold it. We had huge clients that would come to us for the service, but it was really managing the activities inside. And then I said, as I was becoming less risk taker, I said, I will do an MBA. It took me 2 years. It was 2 years that the company shouldn't be waiting for someone to learn how to do things, and maybe getting someone out of the more operational, and we were all very operational at that stage, but getting out of the operation to learn something to do later. But I agree, it's a huge dilemma because you don't have much money. So what you can, here in the States, it's a little easier because you can tell people, we don't have much money now, but if this thing grows, you get shares or something, right? So that is to an advantage in one side, but at the other side, you figure out that you are getting attached to someone that maybe is not so relevant to the business later, and you're giving away your power, even the power of decision in the organization in the future, I think.
More questions? Yes.
So how can we find the right like team member, like the co-founder? So like because they are like different people, and a lot of people they are interested in joining startups. Like from Lecehne, we can find plenty of people. How to choose the right one?
Jonathan, you want to take up? You're the most experienced, I think.
We're going to say something.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I talked about the fact that I had another a co-founder previously.
It's not
It's
going. No, you just have to press and keep it pressing.
Yeah, like
That's
this.
on? Okay. Can you hear me now? I don't think it's
It will take a little.
Take a couple
Okay.
of seconds.
Oh, there
Yeah.
it is.
There.
Okay. Sorry. Technical difficulties. So I did have a co-founder initially, Jessica Palomino. She was a graduate school friend, and we were actually very overlapping in our technical skills, but she had every desire to be more on the business side, and I would be on the technical side. So I started off in the company as the CTO of the company, and I'm saying names right now, but really what it comes down to is roles and responsibilities. You're going to both be taking on so many roles and responsibilities. I think the most important thing, one of the things that I think actually happens a little too fast on the Berkeley campus specifically is incorporation. You actually don't need to incorporate until you're getting ready to take money. And so it's a perfect way to say, hey, let's try and start this venture together. And you start to put stresses on each other and see how each other works in different situations. You're taking on projects together, you're trying to learn your product market fit. You're able to do a lot of things without putting the actual stress of having titles, co-founder, CEO, CTO. So actually that's one of the ways that you can actually kind of feel out how you interact with the person that you're working with. Are you going to be a good team? Or do you guys have the skill set that's going to ultimately make the most sense to at least start the initial phases? That's one thing I actually did with my second co-founder. So when the first co-founder, she just decided it was not a good match for her. She didn't like the risk of it. It was a lot more than she was expecting for it to be. And it was a very, she just came to me and said, I can't do it any longer. And it was a very honest conversation we had. But then the second time around, I was going to go it alone for a little bit because I was a little bit apprehensive of saying, how do you know when it's the right co-founder, right? I had just gone through this experience. And I was working with Nicole for about almost 7 months. We worked together, we executed some really big milestones, and then it just fit. And she came to me one day and just said, I want to be your co-founder. And these are all the reasons I think that we work well together, and these are my expectations, and this is what I would offer to the company. It was a very honest conversation, and it was very transparent, and that's how it worked for me.
I guess what you're saying, Zara, is that you should date before you marry, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Only at the risk of being reductive, there are only two things in my mind that matter for co-founder relationships. Do you overwhelmingly trust the person? Are they super smart? Nothing else matters. There are going to be 1,000 different things and challenges and problems and tasks that you guys are going to have to figure out. So you're both going to wear a million hats. Those two things have to be true. So if you don't have a co-founder immediately in mind, you got to go meet a lot of people and then spend a lot of time with them. Trivia question. You raise venture capital here in the US. How long does it take if you're going to actually have a successful exit?
In what field?
Yeah, sorry, not drug discovery. Fair. Generally speaking, 8.2 years. You're in this for a really long time. That's at the point at which you raised venture. So it could be 1 or 2 years before that. You're in for a decade. Sitting with a person, bleeding with a person, and crying with a person. Get to know them really well first.
Taking time.
I have a question for Balthazar and of course for the whole panel, but you mentioned that you did a lot of customer interviews.
Yeah.
I'm at the stage right now where I'm conducting a couple interviews and reaching out basically through LinkedIn into referrals. I was wondering if you or any of the other panel members have any other ways that you guys reached out to actually conduct your customer interviews?
The answer is simple, is every way is a good way. You've got to try everything. If you think the cold calling is good, look in your network, go there. Like something they like to say in the Lean Launchpad things, and I think it's very true, is just go. Like in our case, I literally walk into a clinic, people would think I was a patient, was like, no, I just want to talk with your radiologist, can I do that? And we're like, sure, here it is. And that works surprisingly well. And then, you do that 10 times, and out of the 10 times, at worst, 2 or 3 of them are going to be, 7 or 8 are going to throw you out of the door or just answer your questions in 30 seconds. And 2 or 3 are going to be very nice to you and say, oh, you should also meet my colleague there. And then once I literally did that, and I walked into a door, and I talked to 1 person, and then at the end of the afternoon, I had talked to 13 people, because these guys say, oh, I'm so happy you're asking this question, you should talk to this guy, and then this guy took me to that guy, and like, there was a building with 5 stories, and I went through all the doors of the building. So everything is, try everything.
And don't ask too many questions, listen, right?
Yeah.
Just, if you keep quiet, people will talk, because the silence is not comfortable. So listen, because if you keep asking your questions, they're going to answer. Many times they're going to answer back what you already know. So give them a chance of saying something that will surprise you.
I would add, actually, you should take the NSF, the regional NSFI core classes here on the Berkeley campus. Okay, yeah, so just take it.
What was your positive response rate? So did you get like a 3% response rate?
I didn't count. Usually, well, if you just cold call or cold email, it's really like like you're throwing a rock in the pond and seeing if there's a monster that comes out. But if you go if you get in front of people, your turned on rate is going to be way lower. Because if you're in front of them, they're going to say, "Oh, come back in an hour," and then if you show up an hour later, they know you have, you will not go away until you talk to someone. Calling is also, calling is this. Not as good, but also works if you call someone 5 times. The 6th time is going to be either, yes, I meant to come to get back to you, or at least going to be polite and get a few minutes of questions.
Yeah, I'll only add, fight the urge to be an introvert when it comes to customer discovery. Emails are a waste of time. Online surveys are a waste of time, no matter what you read. Get in front of people. Infiltrate their groups. Get introductions. Be uncomfortable, but conversation is how you can probe. I would also really recommend stuff like Steve Blank's business model canvas, and going through the steps and learning what good discovery questions are, and starting to see if any pattern emerges at all, then put on blinders, ignore everything else, and see if there's really a pattern there. One last comment would be, look for virality in this, and what I mean by that is the moment someone's willing to answer your questions, ask them, who else do you know would be willing to answer my questions?
You said those 250 interviews to be how long?
So the NSF asked for 100 interviews in 7 weeks, and we did 120. And then the class was, I don't know, whatever a semester is at Berkeley, is like 8 or 9 weeks, I forgot. But yeah, basically same things, 120, 130. It's 10 a week.
How about your question? Yes.
Thank you for all the awesome talks today. And I'm just wondering, because I'm doing part of my research, my PhD research is related to exactly this topic, how we can bring more the bioengineered discoveries to the market. And I'd like to know if there is like a path or steps that you can forward, like go to IPHA first, or go to KB3 first, or go to, how do you discover, like, is it institutionalized, like here at UC Berkeley, or depends on, it's super personal, you can, because I think she came from another, and he came to for the other countries like me, and how is the path, and how is, like, the boundaries between the institutional, like, you should start with a patent or not, or you can just publish a paper, or go to KB3, or go write your grants. It's like, I'd like to know which step you recommend to us if you want to open it.
Come to BPEP.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we talk about in the process, but I'll let you guys take that.
I can go first. So on the Berkeley campus, it's a pretty straight trajectory if you follow it every startup company, it's this, you're 1 month ahead of them. It's like, oh yeah, you just did check, right? Everybody does the same things. I would actually kind of push back on this a little bit, but I will say that the first thing for us, and typically, is that IP is locked up. So you file your provisional patent here, and it's going to be a year until you're going to be moving along in your PCT application anyways, so you lock that up. And then at that point, they connect you with the startup in a box. Typically, you'll kind of connect you with like a legal team, people that will incorporate the company, and so you get a lot of that right out of the gate. And then if you're lucky, you'll get into one of the accelerators on the campus, and they all specialize in something different. And then you start kind of checking the boxes of now building out your business model, getting product market fit. A lot of the accelerators on the campus are really focusing on that because tech doesn't mean anything unless, translation doesn't mean anything until there's a market. So I would say those are kind of the common steps.
Can I just add one thing? This is what Tara actually mentioned previously as well. When you go to one of these people about starting a company, they'll hook you up with some form of a lawyer to incorporate the company immediately.
Yeah.
Do not do that, okay? Because at the end of the year, you'll start paying taxes. Okay? You're not making any revenue. You didn't raise any money. I did that mistake.
I did that mistake too.
So there are a bunch of people who do that mistake. I think they make it very easy to launch a company. Oh, you're a CEO of a company. You have an incorporation. So do not fall for that. Just take it easy. Like there are so many things that Tara and other people have been mentioning. Do your research before you incorporate a company. That's a plug-in, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would like to add to that is it's a long process. In our case, it took 2.5 years to transition from purely lab saying, hey, does that count as a company, to actually being a company that was getting funding from. And that was fast, yeah. Because we only had to write we got our grants on the second try, so that was fast.
Hi again. So basically I'm from a business background, so I'm not a PhD, I don't do research. And my question is for all of you guys that are PhDs. So when we have in our team someone that is a PhD that is specialized in AI and in machine learning. And my problem is that, as you said, you want to do things perfectly. And what I want right now is just a most valuable product or a prototype. Or I don't need it to be perfect. I just need it to be working and to be with a good design, basically. So how can you talk to PhDs to tell them, we're in business right now, like, I don't have 10 years because many other people will do it in like 1 year or in 2 years.
When I said we have a lot of qualities, but that's the problem.
I will say the one thing about that I think that has been the most valuable for my PhD work is that I know I can learn. I'm somebody that's trainable. PhDs are trainable. And so the one thing I would say is, have you ever thought about bringing this person along with you to a business meeting? You do continue and explain to them, this is what I had to do for myself, because I am a perfectionist, I'm a technical founder, right? So I would say that it took me a long time to get this down until I kept having meetings with investors and hearing their questions. And I didn't understand what it meant, like a real inflection point meant, what a milestone meant to an investor until I actually have those conversations. So I say the more that you can bring them into this conversation, just have them be a part of it, and say, how would you have answered that question when they asked? Or how would, those kind of things, just to start teaching them. And it's going to build communication between the two of you, so you start speaking the same language. That's what I would say.
I would say PhD people are normally good at understanding data and rational arguments, so you can also explain. I mean, the teaching goes through that too. I need the MVP because that's the data you're looking to get with the MVP, which is a business data. It's still data, and as a PhD, you know what that means, right? So you're like, I want to learn this, and that's exactly what I need. Is the MVP, is not the rest.
And don't throw terms like, oh, what is the CAC?
Yeah.
I'm a scientist. Some MBA called me an idiot because I didn't know what a CAC was. I'm like, I didn't know. So be kind.
By the way, what is it?
Cost of customer acquisition. Okay. I have nobody knew that. I mean, we're not used to those things. So it's a give and take. You're going to build that relation when you work with the scientists. So walk into that way. Jonathan, any insights?
I think if you've never watched the Simon Sinek video, It Starts With Why, it's an 18-minute talk on, it's an 18-minute TED Talk, I would suggest it. But when we have really strong PhD technical folks in our founding teams, it doesn't mean they're not super rational. And so agree on the goal. And if the goal is we're just trying to get a customer, an investor, a partner, or a recruit to latch on to potential vision, then it doesn't mean the thing has to fully work yet. But where I see these relationships kind of go screwy is when the founding team's moving so damn fast that the CEO doesn't take the extra minute to explain, here's why we're doing this. And they instead resort to just go do this. And if you say just go do this to a super smart PhD technology person, they're going to slap you across the face, and then they're going to go do it perfectly. And that doesn't work. Thank you.
I think I want to ask one important question. There are two postdocs here who came from a research lab, turning their research into startup companies, and they had different kinds of relations with their PIs. Can you just shed some light in like what are the good things that you experienced, what are the tough things that you wish you could have avoided? So people thinking of that.
You should start.
I know.
No. I'll let you guys talk.
Okay, I can start because I'm not so interconnected with my PI. So Professor Niren Murthy is in the bioengineering department, and I'm not his first startup company that spun out. There's also a great company called GenEdit, the founder of Kumu Lee. He was a graduate student in our
Is he in the advisory board?
Your advisor? No. He has no link to
relation.
BioAmp Diagnostics. But he was definitely the spark for BioAmp because he has an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's one of the reasons I was really drawn to Niren is because I came from a very traditional chemistry background, and then we were just synthesizing medicinal, new molecules, lead molecules. We were just really worried about how to create the best molecule we could, right?
Writing a paper.
We're not looking downstream at like what's the actual impact of this molecule, right? And Niren is really good at saying, no, we're doing this for this bigger picture. And that's what I saw when I came here and I interviewed with the lab. And so that's why I was interested. So he's the one that first, when he saw the data the first time, he's like, Terry, you should patent this. And I think that this is really interesting. And he knows, he's always looking at what's new, what's hot, what's in the market, what companies are coming out. He was already kind of new. He was on this project because it was something exciting him. So he's like, yeah, this is amazing data. Nobody else has this. And he already kind of knew the market. So I was sitting at his desk like, oh, okay. But not once did he ever say, let's do this together. He just said, hey, maybe you want to try this. And that was the first thing. So Niren and I have a great relationship in the sense that he's always been a huge supporter. When I want to bounce an idea off of him, I can come to him and he just gives me his honest opinion, but he has no say in the company. He's not an advisor for the company in any capacity, but he's one of my biggest champions, and he's also made it so that I can continue working, right, as a postdoc, and the projects, because my project is inherently, it was started from my postdoc work, he has also extended my pay, right? And now he's paying me because my fellowship ended. He's paying me, and to continue the work, obviously that's being done. But so he's been a huge support on many different fronts.
Tara, but having you said that, many times it may be interesting to consider having people with that kind of knowledge of the world, let's say, in your advisory boards. I mean, that's usually little money that you give away from, what is a typical pay here in the States? What? 0.5%, 1%, and you have people that you can sit with. Maybe there will be people that will find someone like your advisor that will say, "Well, I'll do this for you," and I don't have anything with that. But maybe if you want someone that you want a little of their time, you don't have money to pay for that, and you say you're going to be in the advisory board, get people, interesting people that could come and discuss the strategy for your organization. Not the operational daily things.
Balthazar, your experiences.
Sorry. Yes.
No worries. Well, first of all, in our case, the PIs also paid for our salaries for 2 years, so that's a big boost because that gives you really the 2-year transition. Basically, you eat noodles on a salary postdoc, but at least you know that you get those noodles. That's the one thing. The second thing, I think the great value in our case that the faculty brought was that They were the initiator of the vision. Mickey, our faculty who is an expert in MRI, he's still like the vision driver. Simply because he drives the vision like with a 20-year, like he's like in 20 years this is going to be super hot, and he's actually right. And the thing is that he's like, as a result, in 2 years this is going to be hot, and it's exactly what you're saying. As a scientific advisor, he's fantastic, and his role in the company is more than that. And to get to the interviews as well, it's amazing because professors have a great network and have a great like, calling cards. We say, hey, I'm an expert in this from Berkeley. Like, can you talk to those guys who are starting a company on this topic? That worked really well. So tapping their network, tapping the fact that they are also very, they are professors, so they are good at what they're doing.
Talk about the tough conversations.
The tough conversations are, it's tough. I mean, it has to be clear. Like I want to give, in our case, the credit to the PIs because they were very open-minded, and they even if it's always there is always a bit of tension at some moments, and it's unavoidable. They've always been very honest, and there's always been a lot of trust between us. And I think that goes back to what you were saying: is that in the end, if you have the trust, and they are super smart, they are good co-founders. And then there's just this weird, awkward moment of transition between, oh, you're paying my salary to, no, we're actually now equal partners. Actually, one of the professors works 1 day a week for the company, so I actually get to pay her now. So it's reversed.
You have a feeling of revenge.
Exactly, it's revenge. But yeah, so as a result, the transition period is something that needs to be managed. So we have honest conversations. Be clear about what you want. Be clear about what they want as well, and don't hesitate to defend what's important for you, and make sure again, like say, this is important for me because of this and that. Normally you should, and I mean, in our case it worked. So.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tough, but I think you all need to realize that you're going to be colleagues. There's no boss relation at that point. You got to transition. It's a mental state for you guys, so keep that trained. Maybe I'll ask. There's Alex and Jonathan are the senior most on this group. What are the biggest mistakes you did during your startups with finding co-founders? How did you? If you went on to the second startup, what do you do differently?
So startup number one, by far the biggest mistake I made was I didn't fire one of my co-founders early enough. I felt a misplaced sense of loyalty to him that had me show up inauthentically, and therefore buried, hid, excused behavior that was inconsistent with what the business needed and was inconsistent with what the team needed, out of a sense of taking care of him even as he didn't take care of himself. By far the biggest mistake I made, probably in my professional career. And so a company that ended up doing okay and having a good exit, probably 1/5 of what it could have been. We lost enormous amounts of time and energy dealing with that, as opposed to just the meta discussion of how is this relationship going, realizing it wasn't, and then elegantly parting ways, which was something that I became good at afterwards.
Alex?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how is it to fire a co-founder? Because he probably will say, you can't fire me, we're so it's again, the think of the dating before marriage here is important. It's probably not enough. The thing is, having partners is human relationships, and human relationships are always, or not always messed up, but could always be messed up if there isn't open dialogue, and if there isn't trust, and if there isn't commitment to the business. Even if it's someone that you trust, but you see, gee, I've been working here, I get here at 6 o'clock in the morning and work until 11 at night, and my co-founder arrives here close to lunchtime, asks me if we want to go to lunch together, and at 5 o'clock in the afternoon he says that he's going to a basketball game or something. You still trust that person in some ways. But where's the commitment? So, and these things develop over time. You can probably already know from not the right beginning, but very soon you already start feeling patterns. So dating in this case is very important. So I agree that if you don't have to incorporate the company straight away, wait a little longer until you have to be paid by someone. That's when until you have to start paying taxes, all right? You get money and you have to wait a little longer and get to know your co-founders. I had already anticipated that, and I had this problem that we were all sort of similar. We thought pretty much the same way. We had been to school together. We had the same skills. It was very good for the kind of service that we were in, automation of industries. We did a lot of money very early with that because it was something that was needed at that stage in Brazil. We were automating, Petrobras, that is the petrol company of the country, and we were just 5 kids that were just out of school in the late 80s. So we were doing a lot of things right, but at the same time, we didn't have the diversity to think of all the different things that could go wrong, and we didn't have anyone to play the devil's advocate and say, what if you're too enthusiastic about this or that, right? And in our case, it was basically we were very projectized already in those days. So we had large projects, and then suddenly those projects would stop being there, and how would we cope still paying for the labor of 80 engineers that we got to have at some stage, if we had no projects, right? So the 4 engineers there didn't have the management skills to think of those, or at least we didn't have it at the right time, and that was...
That's great, that's great. As you're young in your tenure, Balthazar and Tara, what are the things that you would want to do differently going forward with your founding teams or early employees, if you had any?
I actually wouldn't change a thing.
And remember that we're recording, right? If you're going to announce that you're firing someone tomorrow, don't announce it here because they will know before you...
Before you can even get to them. No, I actually think I would not change a thing. And I believe this in life. I think that there's no such thing as if you're a thoughtful person, if you really think about each of the decisions that you make, I don't actually think that anything is ever wrong, right? You learn something from every single experience. And with like my first co-founder, yeah, it didn't go perfectly, but there was a reason that I was inspired to start this process and this journey with her, and it would not have moved forward without her, right? So that's the biggest thing. I think that every single decision we make is really important, good or bad. It's all good learnings.
And many times we only know afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how else are you going to know?
I'm on your board, and I think the only thing I wish I had done differently is every lesson I learned, I wish I had learned them earlier.
Yeah.
But that's simply from damn, like we have so much trouble if I had known that 3 months before.
Okay, we have 5 minutes to 8. One last question, and then I'll leave it to you guys for some last parting comments.
So good evening. Probably I'm the most junior person here because I'm neither in my grads or in my postgrads. I'm an undergrad in my junior year.
Get out.
Did you come here for the pizza or the beer? Because we have to check if you're old enough for the beer.
And I am from India, and I'm here for a semester. I am on my startup semester with Berkeley, with Sutarja Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology. So I'm kind of working with 4 startup programs right now, but one problem that I thought, you all are way ahead and I'm just starting my journey. So I would be direct, in a team of diverse members, I think there is a particular team with which I'm working, and if I have the potential of going maybe 100% because of the other team members, they're pulling me down to 75% or 60%, I cannot express my views, or maybe I cannot perform up to that level which I want to, or I know I can. How do I deal situations like this? And another question would be for people like us who aspire to be entrepreneurs and are just starting on our way in this journey, could you tell something about that?
Okay, there's some conflict there, it sounds like. And I think this is one of the important things that my co-founder and I did, Nicole, did out of the gate, was we set quarterly meetings to sit down and talk about whatever it is that we needed to talk about. And the rules for how this goes is this person comes in and they can literally say anything that's bothering them, that's on their mind, that's going well. It could be something positive, it could be anything, but the other person's not allowed to actually respond. It's literally just a dump. And I think it's really great because it allows you to just listen in. It takes some of the defense away because there is no, you cannot respond, you only can listen in this first round. And I think that that's been really important in terms of communication. If somebody's not willing to communicate with you, it will never ever work. Okay, and I think that's just cut your losses now, kind of thing, and move on. You have ideas, you're excited about something. There's going to be other opportunities. And so that's one thing I would say. If you cannot communicate as a team, there is no possible way it can work.
All right, last thoughts? You can network afterwards, please. Yeah. Jonathan, any last thoughts?
I guess one that we didn't touch on, when our companies are hiring, we have a lens of trying to hire to solve for the next 18 months, and that's about it. That young companies that are figuring stuff out and starting to grow at an interesting pace, what a company looks like today versus 6, 12, 18 months from now will be transformed. The company doesn't remotely look the same anymore, and as a result, a lot of the folks that are appropriate for the earliest stages of a company's maturation simply don't fit a year and a half later or 2 years later, and that can be upsetting because you put so much heart into these relationships and those people with so much heart into the vision of the business, and they simply don't fit anymore. And that's not their fault or your fault, and no one's a bad person. It's just startups grow really quickly, and the stage of going from nothing to something, and then something that kind of works and someone's paying you for it, and then something that is getting paid for, and you're trying to find a repeatable engine for the business. And you found a repeatable engine, now you're saying, how can we go really fast across everywhere? Those are really different humans. And the humans that got you at the beginning aren't probably going to be with you anymore. And so it's kind of healthy to have that outlook of like, I'm not looking to hire someone that can get me through 5 years. I'm looking to hire someone to get me through the next year and a half.
So the startup is more like a project, right? And then you have the operation afterwards, when everything is smooth and going. It's different people that do one thing and the other.
I haven't seen the smooth part, sir.
No?
Tara?
Yeah, I think there are some, we didn't get to talk about equity and things that kind of measures you can, we talked about a little bit about equity for advisors and things, and I think there are some little safeguards that you can put in place, and I think that I actually had a really hard learning with this with my first co-founder. We didn't put in some safeties in our equity that made it really difficult down the line when things didn't go well. And I think that the one thing that we didn't get to touch upon, and I would kind of leave you with, this is something that you would only really be impacted by once you go in and you start incorporating and you have to assign shares and equity to people, is being really mindful with when you give equity and how you protect your company, and all you have as a startup is your shares, really. Nobody, I mean, some people will take equity splits or instead of cash, right? And if you have no equity to work with, you're completely sunk to some extent. And so something that I think I would leave you all with is doing as much homework as you can out of the gate in terms of the business side. If you're going to take on a venture, it's your responsibility to think about, there's all of these interpersonal relationships and communication and building like a strong foundation between you and your co-founder, maybe going out, making sure you have dinner with each other once a month. There's all these components, but then there's also the business side. And that you really want to, your job, if you're the more taking on a CEO role, your job is to protect that company, right? And to make a successful company. And so making sure you do your homework on that side, I think, is something very important for first-time founders to really consider. And I was lucky enough to be able to have an amazing group of advisors around me to help me clean up a mess, but I did end up with a mess at some point. So,
yeah, I think it's kind of a common, like something you hear everywhere, but say try to solve a problem you're passionate about, and that actually makes a difference in the world. That comes from two reasons. One is I was thinking about a quote I read last night, which is the difference between stress and passion is when you work hard, very hard on something that you don't like, this is stress. When you work very hard on something that you love, this is passion. And in entrepreneurship, sometimes the line between one and the other can be very tenuous. And the work is hard, so the stress becomes very, very hard as soon as you lose the patient. So be driven. And in our case, I think another thing that the faculty brought was really like, when we were down and we're like, okay, yes, we're trying to solve a problem which is meaningful, because one of the key key targets for improvement of MRI is for pediatric patients, who right now there is no real good way to get a kid to get an MRI apart from putting them under general anesthesia. So if you do it once, it's okay. When you have kids who need to get MRI scans every 3 months, it starts to really be a problem. And that's, it's for me and for the whole team, it's a motivation that goes beyond just, okay, let's have this startup get off the ground. And that makes a difference. And in the hard times, that was really what saved us. So I would say be mindful of that, and also, if you're going to do all that hard work, I mean, of course, if you get successful and get rich in the end, that's fantastic. But if you also solve one of the world's problems, it's even better, and that's so much more gratifying, and it's so much more worth it that try to go for that.
My final considerations here would be just communication and respect. And one way of showing respect is listen, because when you listen, people tell you things that are important, and even not only co-founders, but listen to your co-founders, but also listen to your suppliers, listen to your customers. I mean, the customers are, at the end, are the only ones that are paying any bill, right? Listen, and because if there is any conflict happening, it's because someone is not understanding the other. And I guess that we solve a lot if we just give. We learned that in a retreat. I see some of my other VSPA colleagues around. We had a whole weekend in which people were saying, if you have a problem, listen to the others before you expose your ideas, because at least you understand better their own perspectives, and you'll be able to then even change your own perspective. Right?
Thank you, Alex. I'd like to recognize Benson, Saad, Karen, Alex, Nitin. These are the BPEP board members who helped put up this event. Please